Never in the realms of human history has the way the world works been subject to such a rapid revolution and change. And this pandemic-driven drama has really had much more profound effects, it's fair to say, on the creative industries than many others. And that's because the creative industry famously regards its assets as its people, its primary assets as its people. And that's why many agencies have always said that their assets actually go up and down in the lift every day. So how do you cope when these assets can't even get in the front door? Well, it's such a huge question, because obviously the creative industries have had to worry about things like, creative collaboration. How do they maintain team spirit? How do they compete? How do they serve clients? These are all the questions agencies were asking themselves at the start of lockdown. But I think it's also fair to say now the dust is beginning to settle on the pandemic, and the worldview is beginning to clear. I think the shape of the new normal, which is beginning to emerge, might actually be better than what went before. So these are big, and these are profound issues. And that's why this series, which is called Today's Office, aims to really understand and make sense of this brave new world. Every episode we're going to be joined by either a leading creative person or a leading creative leader who is going to tell us about how the pandemic impacted them personally, how it changed the way they sought to manage creative teams, what they believe are the real lessons for the future, and of course the role technology has played in all this, because the role of technology has been really fundamental. And that's why I'm delighted to say that this series is done in partnership with Adobe. Now, Adobe have not only made remote working more possible because of the technology, but it's also accurate to say they have made this little series possible too, which I hope you really enjoy. In this episode, the Jum's very own Imogen Watson is in conversation with Debbie Morrison of Ebiquity.
I guess we'll just start with, where are you coming to us from today?
I'm dialing in. God, is that what you say? I'm zooming in from Devon, which is my country home, where I used to, before the pandemic, spend 4 days a week. And then I used to spend 3 days a week in London working in the office. But now, God, it's over a year now, I've been working here. I feel I've always worked at home. So for me, I've got an office, hardly a professional office, but it's a proper office that I go to work. So going into my office every day is still what I do, except I do it here in the country rather than in London, in central London. And of course, I'm the only occupant of that office. So yeah.
You were semi-prepared. So in that sense, how have you kept your home and your work life separate? And what advice would you give to people who are trying to do the same?
Because I've worked at home, I guess, for sort of 2 days a week at least for the last 20 odd years, I'm quite really well disciplined at leaving the house and physically going to work. So I'm lucky enough to have built my office away from the house. So I physically have to go out of the house in the morning. I trot across the courtyard and I go into my office and I stay there. So for me, there's always been that separation. I never switch off anyway. I'm almost always on in terms of work mode. In a way, the pandemic has sort of made me a bit more disciplined because I don't have anywhere else to go beyond these four walls and the country lanes and the garden. So I have sort of been trying very hard to cut off and not be on 24/7. I know it's really difficult for people, and I do feel, I really feel for people who are sort of don't have a home office and are perching on the end of their kitchen table or on the end of their bed. I think it's really difficult to switch off in those circumstances. So I feel really blessed and lucky that I actually have an office environment to go to. So I guess my advice would be, wherever possible, carve yourself out a little nook somewhere that is your work area, and that's where you do your work, and try your very hardest to not engage 24/7 via your mobile and your iPad or whatever it is that you work on.
But it's easier said than done, I guess. And one of the things with lockdown is just turning off from that. And we usually had a sort of, you know, after work you could go for a drink or something, or do something afterwards to sort of cut in the time. But with lockdown, we were sort of like locked in that sense. So for you,
yeah, and I guess I was just going to say, and I guess my great escape is just getting out into the garden and growing things. And literally, it's probably the only space where I go that I don't think about work, because I don't get any signal on my mobile in my greenhouse. So I don't have an option. There's no like, oh, what was that was coming in? It's, you know, I physically go in the greenhouse or in the patch.
It's very therapeutic for sure. And so your work situation this year has been less commuting and more growing vegetables, as we've just mentioned. So when things slowly get back to normal, whatever normal will be, how do you think that will sort of change how do you think you'll be doing a hybrid of the two? How is it going to change the feeling going back?
Do you know what? I don't really know, because looking back now, I realised the complete lunacy of me doing a commute from Devon. So, you know, doing a 3/4 hour commute on a Monday morning now to me seems, you know, ridiculous and not great for the environment, and also a complete waste of time. Though having said that, I would always work on the train. But I think I'm going to try and work at home more. I'm maybe go into the office a couple of times a month. I don't really know. It's something I need to talk to Ebiquity about. But I feel it's been a great success, to be honest, working from home. We've been more creative. We've engaged more clients because everybody's been in the same situation. So we're only opening one floor with 25% capacity. So not everybody can go in. And being one of the lucky ones that's got a home office, you know, perhaps I'll be one of the sacrificial lambs that will be happy to work from home a bit longer until things settle down. So I guess it's all up for discussion, but I really do not feel that the 3/4 hour commute from Devon is a productive way to work now, having looked back and reflected on the last year.
How many times a week would you have done a 4-hour commute?
No, I just come up on a Monday morning and then go home on a Wednesday evening. But it's still, you know, it's a very early start. I would be up at 5. I would be on the train at 5:45. I would be, you know, to get into the office. You know, again, home very late on a Wednesday. But also when I live in London, you know, ridiculous situation. I live 5 miles from the office. Yet it takes me an hour and an hour and a half to get into the office, which is mental, isn't it? Really, it's a waste of time, and I feel like it's not efficient to be doing that commute. I feel like there's better ways to be spending your time focusing on the business.
I feel in London there's a sort of rule that everything is just at least 40 minutes away, which is crazy when you think about other cities and whatnot, which would be like you're going to a different city if you're going to take 40 minutes or not. So I think we're sort of reflecting on how crazy our lifestyles were before, and we've got more time for things like I go swimming in the morning now, which I never would have been able to do before, which is like a nice therapeutic, similar to your sort of gardening thing, sort of respite, because you can't have your phone either, or that's quite a dangerous thing to do if you did. Well, the next question, to be honest, is the fact that living in the middle of the countryside, what are your coping strategies for internet connection? And
my coping strategies are just profuse apologies for when my internet is very sticky. I mean, I live at the end of the line, so to speak, so our speeds are not brilliant. And normally I just switch my camera off, to be honest, and then you know, I can talk, or I call people. It's not been too bad. It wasn't too bad till all the kids came home, and then they all too were working from home, and there was a massive draw on the internet. But you know, it's a rural community. Nobody is any different around here. And also, you know, I've spoken with my colleagues and my teammates. They're in central London and they have the same issues. I was on a call only yesterday where my colleague Olga was like, oh, sorry. She lives literally in Kensington, and her internet was just as bad. So I think it's not just me and being in the country, but certainly the coping strategy is apologies and catching up on a different landline or a mobile, really trying a different route. It's not perfect, but we make do and mend, so they say. It sounds like the war, doesn't it? God, I'm not that old, but yeah, you just try and make the best of what you've got.
For sure. And I feel like my internet's always just dropped off at the moment where you're just least expecting it. It's like you can't really prepare for it because it will just go wherever it wants. So you've already spoken, obviously, that you said that you feel more, that you've been able to work more creatively at home as such. So I wonder if you can talk about, you know, what technologies have enabled you to carry on working as creatively as you did before. And would you say that remote working, so back to what you just said, has it been more positive in that sense?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think we've been uber creative this year. And I do think the pandemic has really challenged us all to think differently about how we operate, what we do. I mean, I'm not the greatest with technology, but, you know, I've dived in, I've got used to all the different meeting platforms, you know, Google, Zoom, all of the different platforms that whenever somebody sends me one through, I think, oh, that's interesting. I was at a conference last week and they had a really great networking platform. You know, Zoom, you can dive into rooms to talk to people. So I think it's really challenged us to think creatively about how we manage our meetings, how we have a dialogue with our clients and our customers. And, you know, I'm really proud of our team and the way that we have, you know, switched what we've done overnight, which is what I guess happened with everybody. But I just feel like it's business as usual, but more enhanced and more interesting. So, for instance, I run Ebiquity's Client Council, which is our most senior clients. We get together 3 or 4 times a year. We used to do this over a dinner. And of course, now we couldn't meet. So I thought, well, what can I do to get people engaged? Nobody wants to just do yet another Zoom meeting. So I did virtual lunches. I sent people picnics. We all sat down. We had a social together. We talked business, but we did it in a more creative way. And what that enabled also was people to dial in from other markets. So before it was a very sort of UK-based thing, but now it's a European format, and people dial in from Geneva, from Germany, from Amsterdam, from all over Europe. And then we've also been able to set that up in Southeast Asia and various other markets. So it's freed up and really, I guess, broken down the boundaries, the market boundaries, and it's brought people more together. And I think the same thing has also happened internally in terms of silos internally, but also across markets. So when we have our marketing and new business meeting now on every week, you know, people will dial in from all markets, and it's really brought us all together in a way that just didn't happen before because we were physically based. We were based in London, and that it isn't what we did. So I feel like it's been really beneficial. And the other thing I do is run a procurement forum on media issues. And again, the same things happen. More people have been able to dial into that because it's not a physical place. It doesn't require you to come into London. It just requires you to dial in. And we've kept that, and it's more of a community. So we've been able to keep those communities live by just thinking up alternative ways of doing things.
It's so strange to hear you say I was at a conference like that. Just for a second, I was like, wow, and that shows how far we've come, because, you know, things do carry on. Lastly, what would you say is the one thing that you have missed the most while working remotely?
Oh my goodness. Really hugging people, seeing my colleagues face to face, you know, the serendipity of having a conversation with somebody in a corridor and it sparks something. I mean, it's not quite the same when you drop in on Zoom with somebody. It's a little bit more organized. It's not as easy to just, you know, dial somebody up, although we do, I guess, but it's just not the same as a group of you getting together. So I've really missed, you know, real people, physical people, and I've really missed great coffee. I mean, I live in the middle of the country. There are no coffee shops. And to be honest, I am completely sick of my own cooking. So you've just got to get your alternative brain on and get it thinking differently about whatever situation you're in. So
it's been a fun exercise.
That's me.
Well, thank you so much for joining and sharing about your life working remotely. And if I'm ever in Devon, I want to come try and see the greenhouse and all the vegetables and everything growing. Slightly behind schedule this year.
You're very welcome.
That's all we have time for. Thanks for joining us for the latest episode of Today's Office, produced in partnership with Adobe. If you enjoyed this, there's plenty more where it came from, so please visit the Hub for more.